Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Do each of you want to grab a mic? There should be one for each of you. I can hear dishes behind me. I hope people had good lunch. I'm Rachel Metz. I'm an AI reporter with Bloomberg News. I've been covering AI since before the current craziness, so it's been a while. And these people have been involved in this field for quite a long time too. Do you each want to just go down and say briefly who you are and what company you're with, in case these people do not know your face?
Sure, thank you. Tim Cowley, CFO of Buzz HPC. Buzz HPC is one of the largest GPU cloud service providers operating at scale in Canada and Sweden. We've been operating GPU clusters since 2017. We're a NVIDIA certified partner, and all of our data is 100% green energy source. So we feel we're bridging the gap between sustainability and AI. And these days, we're 100% focused on AI solutions for our clients. We offer an AI refinery, Agentic refinery product, where we host open source models, and our clients can come and tune those models, add their own data, their own workflows, and store on our secure cloud.
Awesome. You want to go next?
Thank you. So I'm with Prosus, our lead artificial intelligence for Prosus. We are a consumer internet group, so I'm the other side of the spectrum here, right? So we serve consumers, about 2 billion consumers globally, with various brands in 100 countries. Headquartered in Amsterdam, listed in the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, and we serve customers from food delivery companies, from classifieds, e-commerce, traditional platforms, travel, real estate, education, everything in between. So lifestyle experience. We use AI everywhere, and increasingly agents.
Great. Alex?
I'm Alex. I work at Windsurf, which was formerly Codium. I was the first deployed engineer there, and have since taken on the role as field CTO. We're building AI coding assistants. So we built the first AI IDE. And our main focus is the enterprise. That is our bread and butter. These days, we have about 54% of the Fortune 500 as customers, and work in a number of the most regulated industries like finance, insurance, and things like that. So,
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. So I'm Peter. I'm from AI team at Gnosis. So Gnosis is a Gnosis chain, and we are bringing AI agents into the blockchain in various use cases, from prediction markets. So the AI agents are predicting the future and trading on the right outcomes, up to those of protection of the users on the chain in the everyday transactions, so trying to detect fraud and prevent it as in standard banking systems.
Lovely. And Maddie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Matti, and thanks for having me here, and thanks for being here. I'm a co-founder at ElevenLabs. ElevenLabs is a voice AI research and a product deployment company. And we want to be the voice of technology, so bring voice to make all the use cases accessible, all the content available across languages, across all voices, across all sounds. And for the purposes of this panel, one of the biggest use cases we see is, of course, making computers speak and giving the voice to the agents around it, or allowing people to create the voice agents. So excited for the conversation.
Yeah, all right, let's get started. So we're here to talk about AI and agents. The agentic economy is part of this title. I think what's really important for us to chat about first is, what is an AI agent to you? When I talk to different people about AI, they have different ideas. So give me a couple thoughts from some of your experiences. What is an AI agent?
Well, I think at a very broad definition, an AI agent is a piece of software that kind of perceives its own environment. It makes decisions. It takes actions by acting autonomously to achieve preset defined goals at a very basic definition.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I will also add that for me, it becomes agenting or agent with its capacity to also get the feedback from the environment. So not just acting it, but also some kind of the memory. And ideally, if the agent is running continuously, or at least semi-continuously, so that it's acting in the environment, getting the feedback, and perhaps in the future, even in the very same situation or similar one, it can behave differently if it learned to do so from the feedback.
Cool. Matt, you want to add something?
And maybe last one, for the agent to be successful, as you think about the future of those agents, they need to be able to operate across the modalities. Okay. So self-severingly, of course, voice will be a big part of that interface, but also the visual aspect of being able to understand things around you and interact with that world to be able to do exactly what the colleagues mentioned earlier.
So let's talk a little bit about the state of the art. How are you seeing AI being used in an agentic fashion? How are your companies building and rolling it out? And like, what are you seeing? What's actually happening right now?
I think for us, it's always been about how do you extend the magnitude of work that can be done, right? And when agents became a thing, it allowed you to do more multi-step problems, because that's like definitionally where we find agents is the ability to give the large language model agency and kind of reasoning over complex tasks and then using the tools at its disposal to do work. So really what it came down to for us was when we saw that the models got good enough to reason, that's when we were able to really bring them into production at enterprise scale, was because the accuracy, or more, the error rate was small enough that it didn't compound over those multiple steps.
Yeah, we see that as well. So back in 2022, we decided to give everybody in our company, 25,000 people, an assistant, which is like similar to ChatGPT, but just for our own data and everybody tuned for our own use cases. And at that time, it had about 10% of hallucinations, which is quite a bit, right? So it means it's like going around in a minefield, and occasionally just get the bomb, and so on. And that reduced by itself, just models got better, but it didn't really get to zero. It sort of plateaued 2.5% of all interactions, and we could get to about less than 1% because we introduced agents. So a simple reason why agents are important is because you can get more trustworthy conversations, which otherwise would be essentially impossible.
Yeah, and I think a practical example, I mean, we work with a lot of large consulting firms who, their entire business model has changed to now trying to install agentic solutions for large enterprise companies. And we hear a lot of their use cases. And, and a classic one is DHL and how DHL has implemented agents. And DHL has been using AI in its business for a long time in terms of predicting traffic routes and shipping demands and weather optimization. But they've gone from just using AI to come up with a result and then have human interactions to having agents to make autonomous decisions in terms of reducing, optimizing their warehouse capacity and decreasing their shipping times. And they've actually had practical results. And they recently announced in the last 12 months, their delivery times were improved by 20%, and their warehouse costs were down by 15%. Purely, above and above AI, purely down to the use of agents. So that's a pretty good practical use case.
Okay. One trend that has become quite hot, especially in the past year, is using AI and AI agents for coding. It is so hot, in fact, that I reported pretty recently that OpenAI has agreed to pay $3 billion for a company called Windsurf. Alex, you're involved with that company. Why do you think coding is such an attractive application for AI agents? And what has surprised you, if anything, about the popularity of this application?
I think the first piece is that engineers are naturally very tech forward. They're very experimental. So I think very early on, that gained a lot of traction. I think what was really nice about coding and is what makes LLMs very good at it is, there's a very good feedback loop of what is good and bad. Code works, code doesn't, it compiles, it doesn't, right? And I think that was a fundamental piece of what made it very good. I think naturally there was a lot of open source code that led to these models being very good. I think that's the core piece, is that inside of like what is the training distribution of these models, and when these agents go to reason, that is the important piece, is deeply understanding complex problems. And there's all kinds of good places like Stack Overflow or GitHub to find those places to train on. And I think that was a big piece that led to be that kind of the first piece. And we're seeing this more and more now as other industries are coming in, and you have these deployed engineers trying to figure out those bespoke workflows and go and break them down for the agents because they aren't in distribution. And that's what made it a very good horizontal product early on.
Are there, similar to that, like when I first started to see AI agents becoming popular for coding, even though I'm not a software engineer, what I liked about it was that you could easily see like this works or it doesn't work. which with a lot of other things, you really have to look a lot at what did I get out of a large language model, for instance. Are there issues with the factuality of the results and that kind of stuff? Does the code work? Does it not? Are there other fields, other applications that you think are really ripe for this same kind? Like, could it get sort of the same treatment or the same popularity as AI agents for coding?
I can quickly start on the, which is also an interesting one for us to see internally, where of course now that the models got so good at coding, that kind of unlocked this new wave of incredible applications. Of course, Windsurf, Cursor are some of the great examples, but also like the whole idea of creating and prompting an app in a much quicker way. Lovable is a great example, which suddenly got unlocked, which for us meant internally, for a lot of our go-to-market and salespeople, that suddenly a lot of those people could actually prototype live with the customer to be on the field and actually show some of the examples of what could be built if we combine, of course, voice, LLMs, but also that prototype together, which I think is an incredible use case where now the models get good, you can see that kind of the V0 actually working. And hopefully over time, this will move to some part of the production and maybe in the future full production, but something that wasn't possible at all if you look at 12 months ago timescale.
Yeah, and something we are particularly interested in Gnosis are prediction markets. So the prediction market is basically a question about the future with that set of outcomes. And what those LLMs are great at are summarizing and researching information on the internet. So basically they can process a huge amount of information and make some sort of reasoning out of it, whether this thing will happen or will not happen. And that can provide a great insights to the people that are actually asking the questions if they see a value in it. And the great thing is that at the end of the day, there is this monetary motivation for the people to actually correct the agents. So they are wrong many times, of course. However, if they are, people can just come in, correct them, and then there is this infinite loop of just getting better and better and better, making mistakes somewhere else, we can correct them, and so on.
Just like following on Matty's point about multimodality, I mean, that's so important now. Multimodality is really the interaction of voice, text, coding, image. And when you think about it, that makes much more of a equivalent to a human interaction. Humans are multimodal. Now AI agents becoming multimodal. I mean, the ElevenLabs V3 voice is just crazy, right? It's I'm a customer, and you totally doesn't sound at all like it completely sounds human. It's amazing software. So actually getting that multimodality of everything coming together, that's what's creating a much more human experience, much more human interaction, and that's the direction we're totally heading.
Yura, did you want to add something?
Yeah, so I was just reflecting on what you said about coding, because coding, everybody codes in different ways. So there are thousands, when we say coding, it's actually a family of use cases and so on. But there are many, many other use cases in every large organization, I would say, that are bottom up. So we realized very early on when we released, let's say, this assistant, that the best way to get use cases to get them from everybody. It's an exercise of collective learning. It's not something that you come from top and come back. And then what people really wanted is tool to create their own agents. I know how I work, and I know what problem I have, right? I don't expect others to have that knowledge. Therefore, I need to be able myself to automate that work. So that's where we learned a lot. So we released tools for people to create their own, let's say, agents, their senior colleagues in a way. And 500 of those popped up in the last 3 months. So you got now a marketplace of 500 senior colleagues, which are agentic colleagues, that do specific workflows, and other people in the company can borrow, they can just use, and so on. I think that's a very nice mechanism of creation, because it's really hard to do it top down.
Getting this kind of software to work and to work well consistently is really tricky. And I mean, I've used a lot of this stuff where there are grand promises, and then I use an agent, and I'm like, oh, that didn't quite do what I was hoping it would do, or it'll come back and constantly need feedback from me or help, which isn't very helpful. And we talked about this when we were doing a prep call, that you can get really close to really good with this, but getting to that extra, you can get to 95%, but then getting to 100% is so hard. What are some of the challenges you all are facing as you're trying to perfect these kinds of systems and make it so they can work consistently and well for your customers?
Well, I can share let's say, some of our experience again. One of the basic agents is a data agent. So everybody in every organizations need to get data facts from their assets, and they don't want to do it in SQL. They want to use English, Spanish, and so on. So it seems like the simplest possible use case on Earth. And every, let's say, high school student can create a very simple tool that gives you the answer. You write in English, you get the data from database, 80% of quality, which means it's useless, right? It's when you need it 99% when it becomes useful. But so if I want a number is 38, it cannot be in the range between 10 and 50. It has to be 38, right? We found that the biggest time we spend to make the system work is to disambiguate what people want when they ask things, right? Because when we code and they ask the database, we know what we mean, but when we express it in language, it's so ambiguous, right? And so it doesn't work. The SQL translation is trivial, and the other part is to surface knowledge from the organization. I don't know your databases, they are very clean, perfectly documented, but in mine I can find the delay column, delay one, delayed latest, and all this kind of thing, right? So you need to make sure that all the vocabulary, just basic stuff, vocabularies for data, are well coded, well crafted, and so on. So it's an exercise of uncovering knowledge and make it formal for agents. I think that's very important.
And maybe I would add here that as well. One thing to realize is that LLMs are terrible at saying, I don't know. Like, I don't know this, I don't do this, I will rather refer it to someone else. And on its own, it will probably just not do this. And if the information is not in the data, it's more likely that it will just hallucinate, came up with it, because they are literally trained to give you some kind of output. So it's always good to check your system against not just the happy path, when you are asking questions that are well normal and the agent will just let them know, but try to ask something weird, something ordinary, something that 10% of your users will do in the end, and see how it behaves, what it will do.
I think for...
Does it stop working?
Hello? Oh, here we go. I think for Windsurf, there were like 3 big considerations we made when creating the product surface. I think naturally humans still need to be in the loop. We're big believers in that. But I think the first one is latency. You need to have a performant enough system that you're getting back to the user quick enough, right? Users are okay with errors or interruptions as long as they're not waiting 30 minutes to an hour for that, right? So that's like 1. 2, to your point, is we actually spent a lot of time figuring out when is the right time for the agent to stop and ask a question or stop in the process of doing its work and ask for a review before taking the next step. And then the third piece is you need to have a good solution for how the human reviews it. So if you use Windsurf, we have this great design around accepting all, rejecting all, tabbing through changes, tabbing through files, and creating a good experience around that to lower the friction and ultimately just create a better experience for the user to get that output.
And maybe to echo a few points, but to add something that we are seeing, there's definitely those kind of the first problem, the most common one is you really need to map the business logic of the organization into the knowledge base, into what you feed into the agent. Similarly for voice, like what is the voice that will represent your brand? I think that's the first category. Like you really need to spend that setup time to make the agent perform. Otherwise, it will never do that well. The second one, definitely the flavor of reliability is coming up. How does it follow the prompt? Does it perform the prompt instructions that you give it? Does it represent the audio and the voice in a way that you do? And when it doesn't, what is the safeguard? Both from the uptime perspective, what's the fallback mechanism, but also from the specific rails that you put it, if it goes slightly off the topic or off the conversation, what happens then? And maybe the last one and the third one is, I think the big piece, and that's something that we think will evolve even more over the next 12 months, is the integrations. So how do you actually make the agent work with the work systems around your organization, whether this is the existing CRM, whether this is actions that are in the real life? How does it do that and authenticate that securely? How do you get that information back to the flow so it can actually perform all those magical things for you? And I think this will be like the biggest shift that will happen as that becomes increasingly standardized, increasingly safe. But from our side, it's our offering knowledge-based reliability and integrations.
One thing that I've been thinking a lot about as we see more companies roll out software that's positioned as agentic is security. I think a lot about potential security risks, especially if you have agentic systems that can use the internet or connect with other kinds of software, other systems, other people. How are you thinking about keeping these systems secure and preventing them from being misused?
I can go first.
Yeah.
I think
Maddie.
so. There are two parts, and I think from our perspective, there's of course the voice impersonation part, and there's a second one, more outside of voice. You have the agent that needs to do the refund, do a reservation. How does it know that it's actually you? Both of them, different set of complexities. I'll talk maybe more about the first one, given we operate on the voice space, but especially now when that technology is so new, you need to preempt and actually give that information to the user that this is a voice AI agent that's speaking with you. And then the second, as you think about the future, that watermarking system that carries that information every few seconds in the audio, that you can actually use that to decode, okay, this is an authenticated agent. It will be super important because I think all of us here will have one or plenty of agents that act on your behalf, and you know that this will perform in a good way, but you want the other side to know that it's actually acting on your behalf, and that kind of watermarking piece will be critical. The second one on the security side is I think still more tricky. Of course, you can follow the standard approach and pass some of the security authentication now, but of course it doesn't work at scale if you truly want to unleash the agent. Of course, that's one of the common criticism of MCPs, MCP for those working with MCP, of like, great that this is there, but now the authentication is the bottleneck, which we hope to resolve, but it will be a big issue going forward.
And I think that leads into as well some of the ethical considerations as well, and from a risk management point of view, as you're considering installing agents, that's super important. You consider the ethical. Should you be disclosing that you're using that the interactions is with an agent? We firmly believe yes, because you've got to build loyalty with your customer, and the quickest way to lose loyalty is not disclosing using an agent. And there's also significant now regulation and laws that have come in. There's the EU AI Act, there's the California Consumer Discretionary Bot Act, which actually require that if you're using any AI interactions with a customer, you have to disclose it. There's a lot of legal regulations coming in as well. So you certainly have to consider all the ethical considerations from a risk management point of view for not getting sued.
Yeah, and also, you are the creator of the agent, at least for now. So you can choose what it can do and what it cannot do. So it has some set of functions that it can call, that it can use. And perhaps it's not a good idea to give it a total freedom. Functions like withdraw all my money to someone else. And when there is such a function, then there always can be some hard-coded checks as with standard programming. So if the agent is able to withdraw money, then inside of that function, there can be a check to prevent it from doing it without a reason by someone simply prompting your agent.
You mentioned regulations related to informing people about the fact that they're interacting with an AI agent or with a chatbot or AI generally. I'm curious, do you all think that people should people understand, should people know when they're interacting with an AI agent? Or is it a yes/no question, or is it a more nuanced question than that?
This isn't really in our domain, but I believe that as we're going up the learning curve, humans probably should. I think once it becomes a more native thing, it's more about you interacting with a company, right, with the customer support, whatever it might be, and they own the relationship, whether it's an AI agent. It's the same way that humans interact with software now on the internet. Mm-hmm. I think as we roll these out more broadly, it is important, though, that people understand what is going on under the hood, and then it'll become a more native experience long term.
So, me personally, perhaps I don't care so much if I'm speaking to an agent or not, but I care about the output it's giving me and if it's actually helping me. So what's happening to me quite often nowadays is that those customer support agents, at first everything seems nice, they will just introduce themselves, they will greet you and everything, but then I have a question, and it's not a simple question that they can just answer based on the documentation or whatever they have in their prompts. And then they are just looping and saying the same stuff over and over again. I am just give me the real human. And they are saying, no, I'm the real human. Of course you are not. So it would be nice in this case to have some button, hey, I want to chat with the real human. And that's somehow implicitly saying that, hey, this is not the one. But I not a big problem for me not knowing it's not the real human, but if it's actually useful. And if it's not yet useful, so it's not yet at 99.9%, as we were talking about before, then yes.
Maddie, I'm curious what you think, since your company's software is getting better and better and better at mimicking human speech.
No, I 100% echo Alex. I think now when the technology is being rolled out, it's super valuable to disclose that upfront, and it builds the trust. It's something that customers will like as they interact with the brand. If you don't, they will feel cheated. They will feel in some way harmed. So 100%, and then yes, in some future, 2 to 5 years, it will be just become such a big standard for all the technology around us to have agentic piece as part of the experience, where that might be starting to rolled back down. On the kind of interesting piece, we've seen this where now you of course have the stigma where if you are calling a customer support, frequently you have the IVR flow and that frustrating experience of going through this decision tree to get to the answer, and you're trying like, give me the human to go through. And of course, we work with a lot of clients that are trying to change that with AI voices, and we recommend disclosing with that they are AI voices, and they do. And frequently, the way it happens is that now you have a person calling into, they are disclosing, this is an AI agent speaking, how can I help you? Can I collect some of the information? And the human immediately says, of course, let's transition you to, can I be transitioned to a human? And now the way they've tried to tackle it is they will start collecting some of the information from the caller. And frequently it will happen by the time they collected enough of the information, the issue of the caller gets resolved. Which is like, oh, who is it calling? Are you calling about this package? Is the package arriving tomorrow? Is there anything else? And they say, okay, that's done. You don't need to transition me to human anymore. Which is an interesting way of tackling that part as well.
Okay.
So if I can add one thing here, because it links back to the importance of models, the reason that you mentioned before and so on. I think at this moment you have to say, yes, it's a machine that interacts with you. We're doing some experiments where we say more. So we are offering this product to you, and this is the reason why, right? So when you have reasoning machines that you can surface the rationale for that to happening, right? Initially, it's a behavior of user says, okay, interesting. After a while, you know what, I don't care, right? So some of this transparency might not be necessary when you know what is behind, so it's fine. You just give it for granted, I'm fine, let's just move on. Let's do what I need to do.
A quick addition.
Yeah.
There is an exceptions to that case as well. So we recently worked with this charity in Europe, which we are, of course, working on trying to prevent the fraud and scams from happening. So there's a way to try to detect based on the caller's IP if that's a fraud and scam conversation. And we had few fraud and scam callers coming in, usual humans to try to defraud. And then if it was detected with IP, we would surface them with an AI agent. In that case, I don't think you should surface that this is an AI agent speaking, to try to pick up the call and those like grandparent type of scams, and try to waste their time by speaking with them and holding them on the call. And it worked really well. So it was like a lot of wasted time for them. So in those cases, I don't think you should disclose.
That's so fascinating. I hadn't really thought about that use case. One thing that I've also been thinking about besides security is the internet. I mean, for decades now, the internet, we have built it to be appealing and useful, visually appealing, but also content-wise appealing to humans. As we have agents and agentic systems increasingly accessing the internet to fetch information, to figure things out on our behalf, might we need to rethink what the internet looks like? Robots.txt is one of the, like, a very small scale, but it's an interesting effort that I think about when I think about this. Are there ways we need to make information easier to find for agents?
I mean, I think the internet is going to end up being less navigation-based and more task-orientated. You can think of the internet will ultimately can become like a back-end API for agents using data, and the whole advertising model as well is going to change as well, from cost per click to outcome-based pricing and success-based pricing. So I think we're going to see I think it's going to happen naturally, and certainly not overnight. It's going to take time, but I think there will be a natural progression towards that, and it'll be based on monetization.
I hadn't even thought about that. How do you advertise to AI agents on the internet?
But we have to learn to do that, in particular in the consumer world. So the way to get discovered now is through Google, in fact, right? So you optimize for Google Discover. Now need to optimize for agent discovery, which is the other side. How to do that? Well, people are trying many things, but it's far from the optimization that we had before, in part because the agents that scan the web, right, are not yet as where they should be, where they're going to be, and in part because we don't know. But absolutely, I mean, the funnel, the top of the funnel is going to be altered completely.
Matty, did you have something? You were like, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I have a hand high up as well, which makes it confusing. But now that I agree with the task, like kind of change, which will also be interesting thing for the operating systems, where suddenly, you know, it's like kind of all the layers in the space of AI gets harder. Like you hardware is the best, then you have the OS, then the browser, then the app, then the kind of URL. So the moment you move to the task, the agent will decide a lot of those things for you. Let's say you are ordering the food and you want pizza. Instead of now going through the step-side approach of like going to the place, starting pizza, choosing your location, you might have the agent that remembers all that information, you just say it and have it. And I think that we'll see a lot more of move towards preparing for that agentic system, with more companies trying to innovate it in that OS system, whether it's Perplexity with the browser, there's Deutsche Telekom with the phone, trying to prepare for that future, which will be an exciting one of like how can you tailor that to different geographies, different users, different locations in a completely different way where agent is the task performer.
Yeah, maybe it will be similar to the Google search and like similar algorithms for searching on the internet. So you can have a website, but for a very long time, and maybe it still is, I'm not sure, CEO was a thing to optimize your website for the Google to actually show you at the top places. And it can be similar with the agents because they are able to scrub websites, they have vision, they can also see pictures and everything. So the agents can do anything. But if there is a website specifically designed for them, to give them easy access, perhaps some API, perhaps a well-structured text, anything like that, they can use it much better. And perhaps such website will be used by the agents more than the other ones. And so like website creators can optimize for these sort of things.
What are some key things that companies need to think about if they're thinking about adopting AI agents? Like before they actually do it, what should they be thinking about?
I don't know. I can share what we learned is that give everybody as many tools I can possibly get their hands on. Right? So use Windsurf, right? Use our assistant, use Lovable, use everything you can possibly get. The investment for employee is going to be in any case limited. The upside is always a factor of that. And that's how we learned as much as we can.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And I think you really, got to think about it from a step process. You've got to start out by defining your objective. What are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to achieve cost optimization and efficiency, revenue growth, inventory management, customer satisfaction improvement? So you've got to define your objective first. Then if you're an organization, you've got to get executive buy-in, which is normally pretty easy in terms of those objectives. Then you have to really think about, what is the low-hanging fruit? What's a high-value impact use case that you can actually do in your organization? You've got to go for the easy stuff first. And then probably the next step is to, you have to assess your IT infrastructure, your IT staff. You may well need to seek expert advice, hire a consultant. Then you've got to start small, and it's a very iterative process. Often people are putting in the agents, the first year, it can be 75% evaluation and 25% automation.
Okay.
I think this is a big piece for us. We saw this in the coding space, that technology is cool, but when it comes to large enterprises like we work with, there's a ton of change management that has to happen. We're at an AI summit. A lot of people here know about AI, but when we think about companies in the Fortune 500, there's a lot of people in these companies that have no experience with AI. They've heard the word prompt engineering, but they've got no idea what they mean together, right? And I think for us, that's a big thing that has made us successful in these large enterprises is we have a whole team of deployed engineers that come in, educate your team broadly about AI, about our product. We help you find the high-value use cases, like you said, and that's how you really accrue value at the end of the day. And I think early on in the coding space, a lot of people made these investments and didn't see the ROI they expected. And now it's only amplified with agents. You can accrue so much more value if done correctly. And that's the big piece, is the change management.
Okay.
Yeah, and on that regards, perhaps, when you are going to integrate the AI, then perhaps manage your expectations a bit, because as you are saying, it's easy to get into the 80% of stuff done, and to like, yeah, this is awesome, let's integrate right away. But the remaining 20% depends on your use case. If you are in finance, for example, perhaps let's not do it. However, if you have a use case where the risks are minimized, so there is not much that can go wrong, you can just deploy it and use it right away. However, with more security concerns and similar stuff, perhaps you want to pay attention to proper testing and getting into that 99% before you actually deploy it and use it in action.
Yeah, and it's, I think many of people here have seen a lot of demos, and it's easy to show a demo. It's much harder to actually deploy that in production, and I think that's where that big difference and delta will lie. But I do think to one of the points earlier, for most of, and as we think about our work with Fortune 500, you can define use cases that are achievable in a 1 to 3 month period that show some of the value. And maybe they aren't fixing the entirety of the problem, but whether it's information retrieval, so less action-based agents, or whether it's internal training agents, all of those are achievable in a shorter period of time, which are the forcing function to show some of the value, to then bring it over to some of the more complex actions. So that I would push for defining a prototype that you can actually achieve in a short period of time, so you can show the organization and trigger the change management across the company to adopt it wider.
We have to talk about jobs. We can't talk about AI agents and not talk about jobs at all. In like the best case scenario for any AI software that I've used, I would consider it a tool, like a helpful tool at best. But I know that a lot of people are concerned about jobs being replaced by AI. We have some companies that have already said that they're replacing or just not additionally hiring people because of AI. Should we expect AI agents to meaningfully replace people's jobs in the coming years?
Yeah, it probably can and will happen. Like software engineering is replacing jobs from very beginning. Anything that can be automatized is automatized by programs, and then the workers are not needed in that area anymore. However, hopefully it will at the same time create another jobs. So we have AI agent, someone needs to manage the AI agents. If the AI agent screws up, someone needs to fix up, and similarly. So yeah, it will probably replace some jobs, but hopefully at the same time make the boring jobs easier, create some other jobs, and so on.
I think just to answer that on software engineering, the way we see it is we're not here to replace software engineers. I think if you think of a software engineer's salary as an investment, and you're going to get an order of magnitude more work or ROI from that investment of the salary, it actually makes sense to hire more software engineers to pare down your tech debt, to build new features, whatever it might be. If the ROI you're getting on those dollars is higher, we should probably just have more software engineers in the world.
Okay.
But some jobs will definitely, let's say, change radically. This is one, customer support is another one. But the way that we look at this one here is that if you have, so this assistant I mentioned before generated about 1.7 million hours of equivalent work in 1 year. So it's about, let's say, 1,000 employees, which are added to the team without adding the cost. So in a pattern of growth, we can separate the curve of growth from the growth of costs, right? And that's a big impact on the end result.
Yeah, there's going to be tremendous changes in the workforce in many aspects. I mean, I like the Mark Benioff from Salesforce recently announced that about 40% of the work being done at Salesforce is now being done by AI over the last couple of years, and mostly in software engineering and customer support. But a company like Salesforce, do you think they're going to just sit on their hands and go for profit maximization? No, they're going to work on revenue, new product offerings, increasing their total addressable market, bringing products to market faster. So I think the opportunity for global expansion in your customer base and your revenue. So there's going to be so many opportunities that eventually will outweigh. But yes, it certainly will have an impact on a lot of jobs and certainly some sectors.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm sure many people are familiar with this saying, but I think it also applies for agents where people won't be replaced with AI or AI agent. People will be replaced with people using AI agents or AI in the flow, and I think it's very true. Maybe a different aspect on the voice side. Similarly, there's definitely evolution of how the voice talent will act and and not act in some of those circumstances. But maybe a self-serving quick note. We've actually created a voice marketplace where people can create their voice, share it, and earn money while that voice is being used, which with agents actually open up an opportunity that never existed, where you can now have agents interact through that voice with people around. And now we have over 5,000 voices in that marketplace, paid $5 million back to that community, mainly through those interactive experiences that just weren't possible before at all.
Thank you all so much for being here. It was really great to talk to you all. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.